Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So I have finally decided that I am not gonna shave my head. I think a lot of people were opposed to me shaving my head. So instead, I'm gonna be growing out my hair. And what I wanted to do was, I think I'm gonna grow it long enough to the point where I can actually do a man bun. I'm still gonna cut the sides to like a number one, but as of now, I'm gonna grow out the hair. And I figured it's a lot easier to grow out your hair and then cut it later than shaving it and then trying to grow it back. I think I'm just gonna start growing it a little bit longer. But in the time being, here's what I'm gonna be doing to my hair. So until it starts growing longer, I'm pretty much just gonna be putting it in the back and then gelling it so that it kind of stays in place. But I think overall it looks pretty good. Let me give you guys a close-up view of the hairline. I'm right in front of a window, and so you guys can see how dense or lack of density the frontal hairline is. But yeah, overall I think it looks okay. I know that a lot of people who are balding, they tend to cover their foreheads because they don't want to expose their hairlines or the receding, the temples or whatnot. But I think in my case, I'm just going to be putting my hair back until it's long enough, and then I'll try to do a man bun. And if I don't like it, I can always shave it down. That's what I've decided on. So stay tuned, and hopefully once it gets long enough, I can do a hairstyle tutorial for you guys. In today's video, I wanted to discuss 5 early signs of balding. I've been lurking on the forums, the hair loss forums, on Reddit, and every single week I get at least a dozen number of people who reach out to me asking if they're balding or not. I wanted to do this video to show you guys some of the symptoms and signs that you guys can look for to see if you're really balding or not. When a man begins to bald, there's 2 things that go down the drain. One is going to be his hair, and number 2 is going to be his confidence. And as a result, the sooner that you detect or catch balding, it's going to be easier to deal with the treatments. And that's because it's a lot harder for you to regrow new hair as opposed to keeping the hair that you've already got. I'm not a hair specialist or a doctor or anything like that, but I can usually tell if a person is balding or not from my own experience and also from the research that I've been doing over the past few years. So hopefully this video is going to be able to explain if you guys are indeed balding or not and show you different types of signs that you guys can look for. So let's get started. Alright, so number 1, the hair gets harder and harder to style. This is probably one of the best ways to tell if you're balding or not, and I can personally relate to this one. When I was in high school, I loved styling my hair a particular way, something like this. And I've always had a high forehead ever since I was little, not because I'm balding or whatever, but I've always had a high forehead, but a non-receding hairline when I was younger. I love styling my hair very short, and I felt that it was very easy to do because with short hair, all you have to do is just kind of gel it back or spike it or whatever, and that's kind of what was very popular during my high school years. But as I got into college, I realized that I can no longer style my hair a certain way or the way that I used to do it in high school. This is because the hairline was starting to recede and the temples and everything on the hairline was starting to have low density. And when a hairline is starting to recede, it makes it very difficult to style your hair. And that's because normally when the hairline is receding, if you look here, it's going to retreat back. So this part here, which is your widow's peak, is going to stay for the most part. And then on the sides, it's going to retreat. So imagine if you have a very uniform haircut in the front. Obviously, since this is lower than these 2 temples here, the hairs that's going to be here is going to be a lot longer than, let's say, the hairs over here because they're more retreated back. That was one of the number 1 signs that I realized that, I can't do this hairstyle anymore. Something must be wrong with my hair. That's actually one of the very good ways to determine if you're actually balding or not. Alright, number 2, you see excessive hair on your pillow or the shower bed or in the bath plug, or even on your hands when you're styling your hair in the morning. You can try putting some type of screen, one of those screen thingies on the shower drain and count the numbers of hairs if you guys are having difficulty figuring out how much hair that you're losing. But on average, people say that it's normal to lose anywhere from 50 to 100 strands of hair a day. But I think from my own experience, that seems like a very high number. I don't think I even come close to 50. I probably see about 5 to 6 strands of hair every morning on my pillow, which I think is normal. And when I do take a shower and wash my hair, the most amount that I normally see is around 10. And that's usually with a lot of force. When people say that it's normal to lose around 50 to 100 strands of hair, I don't think that's true. I think that's more indicative of a sign of balding. And the thing is, the average person has about 100,000 hairs on their scalp. And they really won't see any signs of balding until they lose about 50%. Until they go down to about 50,000 hairs on their scalp, they're going to start seeing baldness. And this is also one of the reasons why when it comes to hair transplantation, the doctors try to achieve a minimum density of around 50% of your normal density on your scalp, because it's going to create that illusion of a full set of hair, but realistically, it's not really a full set of hair. It's only 50% of the density. So if you're losing a lot of hair per day, one of the good ways to tell if you're balding is to get one of those USB microscopes. So it's going to look something like this. You can buy it for under $20 on eBay. It's called the USB microscope or digital microscope. And a lot of the dermatologists actually use this to determine the hair density and to look for different types of scalp or skin conditions. So this is really good because you can compare the densities, let's say from your temples to the frontal portion of the hairline, or if you're balding on the crown, you can go ahead and look in the crown. So one of the ways that you guys can do this is to kind of compare and contrast the density from surrounding areas. So obviously you don't want to look for the density in the front of the hairline and compare it to the back of the scalp, because the density in the back of the scalp is going to be a lot more higher than, let's say, the frontal hairline. If you think that you're balding, go ahead and buy one of these and count the numbers of hairs that you can see when you're examining your scalp. And let's say you feel like you're balding on the temporal regions, take a look and then compare it with somewhere nearby and see if the densities are similar or not. Chances are, if you're thinning, you can visually see that there's less dense hair, and also the hairs might be a lot thinner, which is also going to be another indication that you're starting to recede or bald. Okay, number 3. Another sign that you may be suffering from male pattern baldness is going to be an itchy and flaky scalp. A lot of people from various forums and people who are actually suffering from hair loss complain about this excessive itchiness and redness of the scalp, which can be caused because of the buildup of sebum on the scalp, and is often a precursor of dandruff and hair loss. An itchy and flaky scalp doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cause hair loss. The two have often been correlated, and many people from numerous hair loss forums and on Reddit and just about anywhere complain about this itchiness, which has been accompanied with hair loss. Some people blame that the itchiness and the redness and the flakiness can all be due to the inflammation caused by the DHT that attacks the hair follicles. But there really hasn't been any concrete evidence as to what causes the itchiness. But based on experience and from talking to people and from reading various forums, it looks like a lot of the itchiness is correlated with hair loss. So if you're starting to itch, like let's say on the hairline or on the temporal regions, and you kind of feel like it's also thinning, chances are it's because that you are receding or suffering from male pattern baldness. Number 4 on our list is the dreaded hairline that shows either an M or a U-shaped hairline with thin, soft, fine hairs on the hairline. Male pattern baldness normally starts at the temples and the hairline and recedes over time. A good way to tell if you're receding or not is to get an aerial view of your hairline. What you want to do is you can ask somebody to take a picture for you from the top, or if you can somehow get a mirror or something and then take a look at your hairline, because a lot of the times when you're looking at the mirror, like right in front of the mirror, it's very hard to tell the shape of your hairline. You kind of have to tilt your hair down and then visually see if you actually have an M shape or U shape. And in my case, I started seeing the M shape when I was around 18 years old, right out of high school. And I was like, oh my god, this hairline does not look normal. Normally, like when you look at a person's hairline, it's normally very straight, or it's somewhat kind of like curved if you're a female, but mine just looks straight up like a U, and I was like, oh my god, maybe this is a sign of male pattern baldness. Now, the best way to confirm if you are actually suffering from male pattern baldness or not is, number 1, if you have an M shape or U shape. The hairline can also be a mature hairline, so it might be a little bit confusing. But the difference between a mature hairline and a receding hairline is if you look very closely at the frontal portion of your hairline and you see tiny little vellus, thin, wispy looking hairs that look like it's thinning. So if you do see one of those, chances are it's because of miniaturization, and that's where the hair follicles weaken over time and they get thinner and thinner and thinner to the point where you're going to start losing hair. Alright, number 5, head sensitivity to the elements. So what I mean by that is, when you step out into the cold or a hot summer weathery day, pay attention to how your head feels. If the summertime your head gets sunburned very easily, you can actually start to be balding, and that's because there's not enough density on your scalp to cover from the ultraviolet light. Now during the wintertime, the hair also offers insulation from the cold, And if you step out on a very frosty winter day and you feel that the top of your head is very cold than usual, you can also be suffering from signs of balding. Last but not least, number 6, another sign indicative of balding or suffering from male pattern baldness is the recession of the temporal triangles. If you guys don't know what the temporal triangles are, it's this area right here. This area, this little triangular piece, if you take a look at it, also it's on the other side of your temples. People that are not balding should have this. They should have like either a very acute or somewhat of a slightly obtuse angle that goes from the sideburns up. And this little piece here, it's very important when it comes to, you know, redesigning your hairline, or if you're trying to look into hair transplantation, you really need to get this redesigned, because this thing here actually helps design your forehead, and it also helps the width, because if you don't have this, it's going to give off that lit appearance like you're pretty much wearing a cap or something like that. A lot of people that are actually balding tend to recess on this as well, and that's why when it comes to hair pieces or toupees, it looks very unnatural, because toupees don't come with the temporal triangles. They only come with the top parts and the hairline. And when you don't have this part right here, it's pretty much like you're putting on a lid. It's going to give that lid appearance, and it's going to make it look very unnatural. And that's why when people that wear toupees, they don't have this part. So that's also a one dead giveaway to tell if somebody has had a hair transplant or not. If they actually have a very nice hairline, but they don't have the temporal triangles, chances are the person actually had a hair transplant or is wearing a headpiece. Now, a lot of hair transplant doctors don't like redesigning this part here if it's recessed, because they feel like it's very hard to create a natural look. And that's very true, because if you guys take a look at mine, the hairs here are a lot more coarse and it's very curly compared to the rest of the hairs. And that's because the doctors ended up using the hairs from the back of the scalp, which is a lot more dense and thicker than, let's say, the side of the temporal point. So what they should have done was they should have at least extracted some of the hairs on the side of my head here instead of the back, and retransplanted that into here. But like I said, this thing here is also another sign. Now, if you take a look at your temporal triangles and see that instead of going straight up or at a very slightly angle, it goes back like from here this way, chances are you're also suffering from male pattern baldness. Anyways, guys, I hope this video has been somewhat helpful in determining whether you or someone that you know is balding or not. It's not conclusive of everything. It is some of the major signs of whether someone is balding or not, and hopefully you guys can use this to determine if you are suffering from male pattern baldness. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Feel free to subscribe, like this video, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.